You look around, and nothing matches. The tree you remember is not there. The ridge you were following has curved the wrong way. For one cold second, your stomach drops, and your whole body changes state. For roughly 300,000 years, this exact moment, the moment of being lost, was one of the most dangerous things that could happen to a human being. Not dangerous because of distance. Dangerous because of what came next. Here is what almost nobody tells you about getting lost in the ancient world. It was not really about geography. It was about time, water, and whether anyone was coming to look for you. Let's reconstruct it. Your ancestor is a young man, maybe 16 years old, tracking a wounded animal through unfamiliar brush. He has followed the blood trail for over an hour, further than he planned. The light is changing. He stops. He turns in a slow circle. Nothing. No landmark he recognizes. No sound of camp. No smoke on the horizon to orient by. This is the moment evolutionary psychologists call a navigational crisis, and the human brain has a very specific, very old reaction to it. Cognitive scientist Daniel Casasanto and others who study spatial cognition have shown that humans rely heavily on what is called a cognitive map, a mental, often unconscious model of the surrounding terrain built from landmarks, the position of the sun, and the direction of prevailing wind. When that internal map fails to match what the eyes are seeing, the brain registers it almost like physical pain. Your ancestor's heart rate has already climbed. This is not weakness. This is 50,000 generations of selection pressure, because the humans who panicked usefully, fast, then focused, survived more often than the ones who panicked uselessly or not at all. So what did he actually do next? Anthropologists who have studied modern foraging and tracking societies, including research among the sand trackers of the Kalahari and the Aboriginal trackers of the Western Desert in Australia, describe a strikingly consistent first response to disorientation. Stop moving. This sounds passive. It is the opposite. Every additional step taken while lost compounds the error, drags the search radius wider, and burns calories and daylight that may matter enormously later. The skilled tracker's first move when lost is almost always to freeze and listen, to actually use senses other than sight, which the panicking mind tends to ignore entirely. Sound travels further than most people expect across open terrain. A second tool, even older than tracking knowledge itself, is backtracking. Your own footprints, your own broken twigs, the bent grass from your own passage minutes earlier. These are a trail leading directly home, and a trained eye can follow them even when nothing else looks familiar. Anthropologist Louis Liebenberg, who has spent decades documenting the tracking abilities of southern African hunter-gatherers, argues that this skill, reading one's own recent passage through terrain, represents one of the oldest forms of systematic reasoning in the human lineage. He calls it the origin of science itself. Reading signs, forming a hypothesis about what happened, testing it against new evidence, revising the hypothesis. Your ancestor lost in the brush was, in a very real sense, doing the earliest version of the scientific method, with his own life as the experiment. But backtracking does not always work. Sometimes the ground is too hard, the rain has washed the signs away, or darkness falls too fast. This is where the second danger enters, not the land, but the night. A human alone after dark, away from fire, away from the group, was exposed to threats that the daytime mostly hid. Large predators, cold that the body could not regulate alone, and something psychologically heavier, isolation itself. Archaeological and ethnographic evidence consistently shows that ancient humans were a profoundly social species, not just emotionally, but functionally. A lone human at night had no one to take turns watching for danger, no one to share body heat, no one to make decisions with when the situation worsened. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer, HRDY, has argued that human survival itself was built on cooperative vigilance, many eyes, many ears, shared risk. Strip that away, even for a single night, and the body's stress response stays activated far longer than it would inside the safety of the group. So your ancestor builds what he can. A small fire, if he is carrying coals or has the tools and time to make one. A barrier of branches against the most likely direction of approach. He positions himself with his back to something solid, a rock face, a thick tree trunk, because an exposed back is, biologically speaking, an alarm bell the nervous system cannot ignore. And he waits, because here is the part of this story that changes everything. He was not actually alone, in the way modern lost hiker stories suggest. Someone was almost certainly already looking for him. In nearly every documented forager society, a person who failed to return by an expected time triggered an immediate, organized response. Anthropologist James Sussman, who lived among the Jew/Honsi San of the Kalahari, has described how deeply attuned these communities were to the rhythms of each member's movement. Who left, in which direction, roughly how long a task should take. A missing hunter at dusk was not a private problem. It was an instant, collective one. Trackers would set out at first light, sometimes before, reading the same signs your ancestor had been reading all day, but now in reverse, following his trail outward from camp instead of trying to find his way back in. This is the detail that overturns the popular image of ancient life as a brutal, sink-or-swim individual struggle. The system was never built around the individual surviving alone. It was built around the group, never losing a member, without trying everything to get them back. Now here is the counterintuitive twist. In many cases, the lost person's best strategy was not to find their way home at all. It was to make themselves easier to be found. Staying in one visible, elevated, or smoke-producing location and waiting was, more often than not, faster and safer than wandering through unfamiliar terrain, hoping to stumble onto something recognizable. Search and rescue researchers studying modern lost person behavior have found the same pattern holds today. Most people who survive being lost did so by staying relatively still and making themselves visible, not by aggressively self-rescuing. Your ancestors' instincts, refined over hundreds of thousands of years, were already pointing him toward exactly this. By midday the following day, in our reconstructed scene, the trackers find him. Not by luck. By reading broken stems, a partial footprint in dried mud, the direction a startled bird had flown the previous afternoon when something walked beneath its perch. He is given water first, then food, then questions. What happened is reconstructed together, out loud, by the fire that night, because the story itself becomes useful information for the next person who might find themselves in the same brush, at the same time of day, chasing the same kind of trail too far. This is the modern mirror, and it is an uncomfortable one. Today, getting lost rarely means physical danger in the way it once did. A phone, a signal, a blue dot on a map. These have replaced almost the entire ancient skill set in a single generation. But the psychological architecture has not gone anywhere. Studies of how humans respond to losing a GPS signal, misreading a subway map in an unfamiliar city, or simply not knowing which way is north in a windowless building show the same spike in cortisol, the same flush of low-grade panic that your ancestor felt standing in that brush. Your brain still runs the ancient navigational alarm system. It just rarely gets the chance to finish the story the way your ancestors did, with trackers on the way, a fire built, and a group that was never going to stop looking. You glance down at your phone. Full signal. A blue dot exactly where you are. It is so easy to forget that for almost the entire span of human history, that small, constant certainty about your own location did not exist at all, and people built entire systems of knowledge, attention, and community devoted to surviving without it. You were never built to be lost alone. You were built to be found,